Have you ever left a conversation and immediately started dissecting every word you said? That moment when you walk away and your mind becomes a courtroom, you replay every sentence, analyze every pause, scrutinize every facial expression you think you saw. Did I talk too much? Why did they look at me that way? That joke fell flat. I sounded stupid when I said that thing about work. The mental replay begins instantly, frame by frame, word by word. Like you are studying footage of a crime scene where you are both the detective and the suspect. You remember the slight delay before they laughed. You dissect the way they said interesting when you shared your opinion. You convince yourself that their phone notification was actually an excuse to escape the conversation. And then comes the spiral. You start rewriting history. What you should have said. How you could have been funnier. Why you shouldn't have shared that personal detail. You construct elaborate scenarios where you were cooler, smarter, more charming. But here is what is really happening in that moment of post-conversation torture. You are living under the tyranny of the imagined gaze. You believe they are still thinking about you, still analyzing you, still judging every word that came out of your mouth. You imagine them going home and recounting your awkwardness to their partner. You picture them laughing about your mistake with their friends. You are not paranoid. You are not oversensitive. You are trapped in one of the most exhausting delusions the human mind creates. The delusion that you matter as much to them as you do to yourself. Tonight, I am going to shatter this prison and show you the devastating freedom that waits on the other side. Carl Jung understood something about the human psyche that most people spend their entire lives refusing to accept. He called it the ego's desperate need to matter, to be seen, to be significant. But significance is a drug, and like any drug, it creates delusions. The delusion that you are the center of attention. The delusion that your mistakes are being cataloged. The delusion that your awkwardness is being discussed. The delusion that you are living under a microscope when, in reality, you are living in the shadows. This is what I call the spotlight delusion. You believe you are standing center stage under harsh lights while an audience studies your every move. But the brutal truth? The theater is empty. The spotlight is imaginary. The audience you are performing for exists only in your mind. Jung knew that the ego constructs elaborate fantasies to maintain its sense of importance, and the fantasy of constant observation is one of its most destructive creations. Because while you are busy performing for ghosts, you are missing your actual life. Tonight, I am going to shatter this delusion. I am going to show you why your brain creates this imaginary audience. And I am going to reveal the devastating freedom that comes from accepting the truth about what people actually think of you. But I must warn you, this truth will disturb you before it liberates you. Because once you see how invisible you really are, you can never go back to the comfortable prison of imagined importance. Your brain is not trying to torture you. It is trying to protect you. For thousands of years, being rejected by the tribe meant death. Being watched by the group meant safety. Being forgotten meant extinction. So your brain developed what psychologists call the spotlight effect. The cognitive bias that makes you believe others are paying more attention to you than they actually are. Your ancestors needed this hypervigilance. They needed to know if the chief was watching, if the warriors approved, if the tribe accepted them. But your brain has not evolved past this ancient programming. It still believes you are living in a small tribal village where everyone knows everyone, and every social mistake could mean banishment. So it creates an imaginary audience to keep you safe. The problem? You are not living in a tribe of 150 people. You are living in a world of billions where most people do not know you exist. But your ego refuses to accept this reality, because accepting it would mean accepting its own insignificance, and the ego would rather create elaborate, paranoid fantasies than face the truth of its own irrelevance. So it builds a theater in your mind. It places you center stage. It fills the seats with judges. And it forces you to perform day after day for an audience that exists nowhere but in your imagination. The ego tells you they are watching, they are judging, they are remembering. They are talking about you when you leave the room. All lies, all projections, all desperate attempts to maintain the illusion that you matter more than you do. If this content is making sense to you, if you recognize yourself in this invisible theater, click the subscribe button, because what I am about to reveal will fundamentally change how you see yourself and everyone around you. Here is the truth your ego does not want you to know. Right now, someone is thinking about you, but not in the way you imagine. They are not analyzing your last conversation. They are not critiquing your outfit. They are not replaying your awkward moment. They are thinking, did I lock my car? What should I have for dinner? I hope my boss doesn't email me tonight. You are not on their mind because they have their own mind to occupy, their own fears to manage, their own insecurities to wrestle with, their own imaginary audience to perform for. The person you are convinced is judging you, they are worried about how they looked in your interaction. The colleague you think noticed your mistake, they are wondering if they seemed competent. The stranger you think was staring, they were actually looking through you while lost in their own thoughts. This is the brutal mathematics of human attention. Everyone is the star of their own movie, and in their movie, you are barely an extra. You walk into their story for 30 seconds, deliver a line or two, and walk back out. They do not rewind the scene. They do not analyze your performance. They do not discuss you with the director. They move on to the next scene of their own life. The silence after you send a text, they are not crafting the perfect rejection. They are busy, distracted, living their own complicated existence. The laughter you heard behind you, it was not about you. It was about their inside joke, their funny meme, their own private moment of joy. The awkward pause in conversation. They were not judging your words. They were thinking about their own response, their own image, their own need to sound intelligent. You have been shadowboxing with phantoms, wrestling with projections, performing for an audience that is not watching because they are too busy performing for their own imaginary crowd. But here is where it gets dangerous. The spotlight delusion is not just exhausting, it is a form of psychological imprisonment. When you believe everyone is watching, you cannot be authentic. You cannot be spontaneous. You cannot be human. You edit every word before you speak it. You curate every expression before you show it. You rehearse every gesture before you make it. You become a performer rather than a person, a character rather than a human being. And the cruelest irony? This performance anxiety makes you less likable, not more, because people are drawn to authenticity, not perfection. They connect with humanity, not with carefully crafted personas. Your fear of being judged creates the very behavior that would actually be worth judging. Jung wrote about this trap. He called it living from the persona rather than the self. The persona is the mask you wear for the world. The self is who you actually are underneath. But when you live under the imaginary spotlight, you forget there is a difference. The mask becomes your identity. The performance becomes your prison. You lose yourself in the very process of trying to make sure others see you correctly. Let me give you a number that will change everything. The average person thinks about themselves 95% of the time. Not 50%, not 70%, 95%. They wake up thinking about their problems. They eat breakfast thinking about their schedule. They drive to work thinking about their presentation. They interact with you while thinking about how they are coming across to you. When you think someone is analyzing your behavior, they are actually wondering how their behavior looked to you. When you think someone is judging your words, they are replaying their own words in their head. When you think someone is critiquing your appearance, they are worried about a pimple they think everyone can see. The spotlight you feel shining on you, it is actually shining on them, in their own mind, in their own imaginary theater. And here is the most liberating part. They forget you as quickly as you forget them. You remember your embarrassing moment from last week. They forgot it before you finished apologizing. You replay your awkward comment from the party. They cannot even remember what you said. You worry they are still thinking about your mistake. They have made 17 mistakes since then and are only thinking about the most recent one. Human memory is not a surveillance system. It is a highlight reel. And you are not in their highlights. You are not in their deleted scenes. You are not in their movie at all. You are a fleeting moment, a brief encounter, a background character who appeared, delivered their line, and disappeared into the vast ocean of forgettable experiences that make up a human life. This is not cruelty. This is liberation. Now comes the reframe that changes everything. You are not the main character in their story. You are barely a footnote, and this is the greatest gift you have ever been given. Because if they are not watching, you are free to stop performing. If they are not judging, you are free to make mistakes. If they are not remembering, you are free to be imperfect. The imaginary spotlight that has been your prison can become your liberation. Once you realize it is imaginary, you can step out of it. You can speak without scripting every word. You can move without choreographing every gesture. You can exist without editing every moment. You can be awkward, and it will not matter because they will not remember. You can be imperfect, and it will not define you because they will not catalog it. You can be human, and it will not destroy you because they will not judge it. The freedom you have been seeking exists in the very invisibility you have been fearing. Jung called this process individuation, the journey from living for others to living for yourself, from performing a role to embodying your authentic nature. But individuation requires accepting your own irrelevance in the minds of others. And for the ego, this feels like death. It is not death, it is birth. The birth of a person who can finally be themselves because they have stopped trying to be what others want them to be. The birth of someone who can make genuine connections because they are not busy managing impressions. The birth of a human who can take real risks because they are not paralyzed by imaginary consequences. So how do you step out of the imaginary spotlight? You practice being invisible. Tomorrow, go somewhere public, a coffee shop, a bookstore, a park, and observe. Watch how little attention people pay to each other. Watch how absorbed they are in their own phones, their own thoughts, their own private worlds. Notice how quickly their eyes pass over you, how little they register your presence, how completely uninterested they are in analyzing your behavior. This is not because they are rude. This is because they are human, and humans are naturally self-focused, not selfishly, necessarily. They have their own lives to live, their own problems to solve, their own anxieties to manage. Your presence is a blip on their radar, gone as quickly as it appeared. Practice speaking without rehearsing. Practice moving without performing. Practice existing without monitoring every reaction. Start small, say something imperfect, and notice how quickly the conversation moves on. Make a minor mistake, and observe how little anyone cares. Be authentically yourself, and watch how much more people respond to your realness than to your performance. The goal is not to become careless. The goal is to become conscious of the difference between real social consequences and imaginary ones. Real social consequences are rare and serious. Imaginary ones are constant and meaningless. Here is your mission. For the next week, live as if no one is watching, because they are not. Send the text without overthinking it. Speak without scripting it. Move without choreographing it. When you catch yourself performing for the imaginary audience, pause, breathe, remember the truth. They are not watching you. They are watching themselves. They are not judging you. They are judging themselves. They are not thinking about you. They are thinking about themselves. This is not narcissism on their part. This is nature. This is how consciousness works. This is the inescapable mathematics of human attention. Accept this truth, and you will discover something shocking. The less you need their attention, the more likely you are to get it. The less you perform for their approval, the more they approve of who you actually are. The less you worry about their judgment, the more they respect your authenticity. This is the paradox of human connection. The people we are drawn to are not the ones desperately seeking our attention. They are the ones who are comfortable without it. They are the ones who have stepped out of the spotlight and discovered the freedom that exists in the shadows. The imaginary spotlight has been your prison for too long. You have lived as if you are on trial when no one is keeping score. You have performed as if you are on stage when the theater is empty. You have exhausted yourself managing an image that exists only in your mind. Tonight, this ends. Step out of the spotlight, walk off the stage, dismiss the imaginary jury. They are not watching you with the intensity you imagine. They are not judging you with the cruelty you fear. They are not thinking about you with the frequency you believe. They are human, just like you, absorbed in their own inner world, fighting their own battles, managing their own anxieties. Your freedom begins the moment you accept your irrelevance in their thoughts. Your authenticity emerges when you stop trying to control their perceptions. This is not about becoming careless. This is about becoming free. Free to be imperfect without shame. Free to make mistakes without catastrophe. Free to be yourself without apology. The brutal truth about what people actually think of you? They do not think about you at all. And that is the most liberating truth you will ever hear. Now, go live like no one is watching. Because no one is. Write in the comments, I am stepping out of the spotlight. Let me see how many of you are ready to embrace your beautiful irrelevance. Your real life is waiting for you outside the imaginary theater. Time to claim it.